there's a clunk from the right front. Can you hear it? Now to fix this issue, I should have replaced these front strut mounts back when I did my front struts and my rear struts and shocks. So now, because I'm an idiot, I'm going to install these fully adjustable caster camber plates that will also replace the strut bearings. And you know what? Since I'm in there doing some front shock stuff, let's do some front lowering springs, some rear lowering springs, an adjustable panhard bar, because why not? We're going to be pulling it all apart anyway. And then these front tires are getting pretty low. The backs are definitely pretty much gone. So how about some new wheels and tires? That clunk you heard during the opener is coming from the front strut mount bearings. We can verify this by pulling directly up on the fender. The driver's side is not currently making any noise, though it's a good idea to replace this part in pairs. But why do front strut mounts need bearings? Simply put, the strut rotates when the wheels are turned left or right. A lack of bearings in this setup would cause binding and excessive wear on the strut itself. Strut bearings tend to fail where the bearing is clamped inside. There's a race filled with tiny ball bearings or roller bearings smashed between the top mount and the spring seat. When that clamping force degrades, it allows for excess vertical movement, which can cause clunks like we're hearing. Since we're installing lowering springs, we should check the factory spring ride height. We'll call that 28.5 inches. A while back, I made a video on replacing the shocks and struts on this Mustang. There's a link up in the top right to that video. There's no reason to film it again. I'm just using sped up bits from that video for linear storytelling. And now back to today. Here's the old strut bearing assembly. This arrow was facing the outside of the vehicle and lines up with the lower strut mount holes. The new adjustable plates have different markings for this function, and we'll cover that in a bit. Looking at the new and old springs side by side, it's pretty obvious there's a bit of a difference. These new springs are supposed to give a maximum of 1.5 inches of drop. We'll measure it again at the end. The new plates do have a right and left mounting direction. The new strut bearing clips into the bottom of the mounting plate. When reassembling the strut, make sure the spring is properly seated into the strut cup. Also, don't forget the spacers that come with the mounts. The taller one will be below the new strut mount and the shorter on the top. The skinny lips on both will face into the mount. And I didn't luck out not needing the spring compressors again. Just a sec. This notch is the indicator for setting the mount up for street or race camber. That'll make more sense when installing. These adjustable mounts can be installed in two ways: street mode and race mode. All these modes really do is dictate the limit of the camber adjustment. The arrow on the old mount lines up with this notch on the new mount. If the notch is facing to the outside of the fender, it is in street mode. If it is facing into the engine bay, it is in race mode. The instructions say street is for a factory alignment setting with 1 inch or more of drop, and race is for 1 inch or less of drop. I put my setup in race mode because I don't know if these lowering springs will drop the full 1.5 inches they're listed to have. It's easy to adjust them in the future if needed. Okay, before we install, this hole here will line up with this oblong hole here, and that'll let you have some caster adjustment. Our camber will be in this way. Install the mount of the strut assembly first, using only finger strength to tighten the nuts and caster bolt. Reconnect the rest of the lower section of the strut. Push the strut mount as forward as possible, then tighten the caster bolt. Eyeball the strut shaft onto the center of the hole, then tighten down the 4 mount nuts. This will get the alignment close enough to drive to an alignment shop. Unless you are building a full-blown race car, I would highly recommend to have an alignment done. The rear suspension will be much simpler. First, a check of the factory height. We'll call that 29 inches. Just like the front, I did already make a video on replacing the rear shocks. Link is in the top right. And also like the fronts, these new springs are a bit different. And moving that airbag over is going to be a pain in the ass. Make sure to put the larger spring gap on the axle side when installing. And before I reconnect everything, I also have to install an adjustable panhard bar. An adjustable panhard bar is recommended when installing lowering springs. This is because the Mustang suspension uses a 3-link style setup. While the 3 arms do a great job holding the axle front and back, it needs something to hold it side to side. One way to achieve this is with a panhard bar. It keeps the axle centered while moving on a fixed arc path as the suspension travels up and down. When a vehicle is lowered, the axle can be pushed too far out of center. A shorter bar than factory is needed, and this adjustable one allows for the perfect fit. And the colors match, so it's a win-win. Now it's time to complete the package. New tires and wheels. I always liked the look of the 20-inch charcoal gray AMR rims. However, these 18-inch 11 to 12 California Special style rims look great with the lowered look. But how much lower did the Mustang actually get? The front started at 28.5 inches and is now at 27.75 inches. The rear was at 29 inches and it is now at 28.25 inches. So roughly a 3/4 inch drop overall, front and rear. This drop can increase as the springs settle from driving. Now to solve this issue, I should have just replaced those strut bearings when I did my front shocks and rear shocks and all that jazz when I had them all apart. But I didn't because I'm an idiot.